Today on Mama Cash Rewind, I am so excited to have a very special guest with me. He's an Academy Award-winning writer, playwright, screenwriter, actor, and songwriter, best known for his beloved classic On Golden Pond, for which he won the Oscar for Best Adapted Screenplay. On Golden Pond became an iconic film starring Henry Fonda, Katharine Hepburn, Jane Fonda, and of course, it has such a special connection to New Hampshire and the Lakes region. Today, Ernest is joining me to talk about his newest novel, Outlaws, a fascinating story built around the question, what if you could walk away from your entire life and start completely over? And because this is Mama Cash Rewind, we're also going to talk about the music, including Ernest's collaboration with Carly Simon on the Father-Daughter Dance, which now has found its way onto Carly's brand new album, Comes in Waves, just released August 14th. There is so much I want to talk about, so Ernest, it is such a pleasure to have you here with me today. How are you?
I am great. I just love listening to your introduction. Why don't you read it to me 2 more times, and I'll feel great about myself all day long.
I could do that after.
Okay.
I could do it after. Okay.
Well, thanks for having me on the show, Mama Cash. It's a pleasure.
Well, the pleasure is all mine, I am sure. You, Ernest, you have such a strong connection to New Hampshire and the Lakes region. What is it about this place that keeps drawing you back here creatively?
Well, first of all, my family lived in Walpole, New Hampshire when I was born, so it's in my blood, although technically I'm a Vermonter because there was no hospital in Walpole, so we went across the river to Bellows Falls.
I see.
But, there's that old saying, you write what you know, and I just love the energy of this state, its beauty, of course, but also its people. And I didn't mean to write On Golden Pond to take place in New Hampshire. The play actually was set in Maine. But the location scout found Squam Lake and said, okay, that's where we're making the movie. And we did.
Oh, okay.
So I'm forever bound here. I moved back in 1990 because I was starting a family. I wanted my kids to have the kind of childhood I did. And it seems to have worked out pretty well for them. But this is where I live. And, everywhere I look, I see extraordinary beauty and even some degree of hope and inspiration.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's a really beautiful place. Surrounded by the lakes, the seasons, and the slower pace, does that change the way you write?
Well, the funny thing is that I wrote On Golden Pond in a crappy apartment in Santa Monica.
Oh, no!
So I guess that it doesn't really matter where I am. I've written on airplanes and subways, but in my head and in my heart, I think I'm always, a Granite Stater. And, so it's easy for me to conjure that. I would say, this sounds kind of trite, but honesty. I write straight from the heart, and I think that a lot of people here live that way. And so it's easy for me to get in touch with those characters when I'm writing a new story. And as you said, On Golden Pond, it's not going away. It's 48 years since I wrote the play, and it still gets produced hundreds of times every year. And the movie, it lives on and on. Yeah,
it's a beautiful film. Ernest, the premise of Outlaws grabbed me immediately. The idea that you could walk away from your entire life and start over. Where did that idea come from?
I don't know. Do you catch the news at all?
Did I recently? No. What? I'm going to be honest. I very seldom listen to the news anymore.
You're very wise. But, we're in a complicated time in our culture and in our society. And I have had friends and relatives who've said, okay, that's enough. I'm moving to Scotland or New Zealand. And then I really started thinking about what would that mean if you could really leave your life and start over? As we get older-ish, we start realizing, it's finite, and we only get the one chance.
Exactly.
So I think that's been playing on my mind a lot. I started writing this book 13 years ago, and it's not that I'm that slow a writer. It's that I did several movies and a couple of plays in the interim and wrote another novel, but the story kept coming back to me. And I think it's even more relative now than it ever has been. And I'm starting to get responses from people who've read the book who are just blown away by it, not only because I think it's a pretty cool book, but because it's an invitation to them to really stop and think, what am I doing in my life and how can I
Mm-hmm.
do it better?
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to pose this question to you anyway, although you've already touched on it. But if you really could erase your past and begin again, do you think most people would actually do it?
No.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't
I
think so
don't.
either.
And in the book, there's a guy who started this program called Outlaws,
Mm-hmm.
and he had a horrible beginning to his life. Was born with a disfiguring birthmark covering most of his face, and he hid, and he was bullied and mocked. And then one day, when he was about 30, he said, "That's enough of that. I'm going to flip the switch." And he became a spirit guide for other people because there are a lot of broken people out there, as you
Right.
probably know,
Yeah.
have observed, and I think we're all a little bit wounded. So he started helping other people, but his success rate in getting people to commit to living a better life is really 1 out of 4. And it's not that I think people don't have good intentions. I think it's that it's hard, and I think we sort of live in fear. We live in a sense of dread of, wow, can I leave my comfort zone and start over again? But
Mm-hmm.
the idea of it, I think, is so intriguing to a lot of people. I was in a gas station in Meredith, New Hampshire, not far from where I live, and I was telling the guy who owns it about Outlaws, and just telling him the basic details and the success rate and how you got to commit to living a better life, or there will be consequences. And the guy at the counter who had taken my credit card said, "Where do I sign up?" And
Yeah.
I was thinking, okay, yeah, I'm talking to the choir here.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so that is the bigger question underneath the thriller. Do we really need to disappear to change our lives, or can we simply decide to become someone different? And it sounds like that was something you may have been thinking about while you were writing it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The premise is, what if you could? And
Mm-hmm.
and the flip side is, why don't you?
Mm-hmm.
And because in theory we can all start tomorrow, and you don't need Outlaws. I prefer you read the book because it's going to ask you a lot of probing questions. But the notion, and I'm living proof. I've been around for a while, and I feel as though I keep improving my life every day in all kinds of ways. And I'm blessed because I get to do what I love. Not everybody has that luxury, but I get to write stories and act in them and direct them. But even at that, there are a lot of mean-spirited novelists and directors and actors, and that's not me. And I don't want to live that life. So,
Mm-hmm.
every day I'm very conscious of what am I doing and how could I do it better.
And so, again, I have anticipated my next question, but did writing this book change the way you actually feel about second chances?
Yeah, in a way, it's been a long process, and I don't mean in just writing the book, but in just growing up and growing out and opening my
Right.
eyes and
Yeah.
understanding. And I think as we all get on in our lives, we start realizing first of all that we don't have that many chances, and there's a lot of meanness in our culture right now, a lot of dishonesty and disagreeableness, and so that's sort of my antidote to that. And I
Mm-hmm.
say to my kids and anyone else foolish enough to listen to me, live your best life. Start right now. You can do it, and we don't have to hide under our beds and wait for it to be over.
Right.
Right now, it falls upon each individual to do whatever we can
Yeah.
to survive and to excel in our lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it's true, and yep, a little bit of that with starting with each person goes a long way.
Yeah, and I've been on this mad book tour for the last couple of months on both coasts, and and I may get around to mentioning the next Wednesday I'm going to be in Concord, New Hampshire, at this thing called Authors on Main
Mm-hmm.
on the 26th at the fabulous Bank of New Hampshire stage. If you don't know, it's a beautiful place. But anyway, I love the reaction that people are giving me from when I tell my story,
Mm-hmm.
not only about Outlaws, but about all these crazy, wonderful, fabulous movie stars and theater stars I've worked with. But I can just see that connection. I can see that sense of longing in people's eyes, because not everyone is going to own up to maybe I could do better. But I just like throwing the invitation out there and letting people pick up on it. And also, I have a blast. I love being in front of an audience, and
Mm-hmm.
an actor, and And so people come to my events, they seem to have a good time, and we get to sell some books. But mostly, I get to sit down and sign their books and hear their stories. And that's really, really important.
Really, how nice. Most people know you as the writer of On Golden Pond. When you look at that story today, do you see it differently than when you very first wrote it? Yeah.
That's a very great question. We're doing a Broadway revival this coming season, and I'm playing the old guy in it and directing it. And I'm sure people are thinking, well, you're a little young for that. But that's where the acting comes in, because I can fake it. But I didn't really, there's an expression that writers don't always know what they've written. And I've had it's sort of like a lab experiment for me to really investigate what On Golden Pond is about. And I have a greater appreciation for it. Mm-hmm. I think it was pretty remarkable that this 28-year-old kid who was an out-of-work actor sat down and wrote the thing. Mm-hmm. But now that I've been at it for a long time, I've directed it several times. I've gotten to work with some extraordinary actors. And I understand better who that old guy is, mm-hmm. and how his actions affect everybody else. And of course, when I wrote it, the word Alzheimer's wasn't part of our vocabulary. I just thought I was writing about someone who was drifting, mm-hmm. Because when I was a kid, we called those people senile. Mm-hmm. But now I understand that better too, and as we all do. And mm-hmm. so I get to go deeper into the scary woods in my production. And it's remarkable to have that gift to be able to continue to evaluate something, because that's not always the way. You're close to the music business. When a song is that's pretty much it. When a book is published, when a movie is in the can, but a play, as far as I'm concerned, is a living thing. And so I get to keep going back and reevaluate it and fine-tune it and like that.
Yeah. Nice. How nice. When, excuse me, when you think, actually, what I want to really ask you is, why do you think On Golden Pond continues to connect with generation after generation?
I wish I knew the answer, because then I could sell a formula and everybody could write movies like that. But there's no such thing, Yeah. But I have this, sort of quaint little axiom that I follow, and everything that I work on has to have what I call the 3 H's: heart, humor, and hope. Mm-hmm. So if you can make an audience laugh, or your readers laugh, because even Outlaws, even though there's a lot of peril in it, is very, very funny. Mm-hmm. People are sending me notes saying, thank you very much. I laughed my ass off reading your book. But there's a reason for that, and that's to keep the reader or the audience engaged.
Right? Yeah.
Golden Pond. Mm-hmm. I think On Golden Pond succeeds in that because it's right out there with its emotion, and I think that even though people may resist that, at the end of the day, I think we all want to be moved by whatever it is, by our own lives, our love life, the books we read, the movies we see, and the songs we listen to.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, this is the biggest thing, Mama Cash, is that it ends hopefully, because the old guy doesn't die at the end of On Golden. Mm-hmm. He looks as if he's gonna, right. But then he gets up, and we think, yes, yeah. There's hope for him, there's hope for us, there's hope for me, there's hope for our lives. Mm-hmm. And that was sort of accidental that I went there, but I now understand how important that is, because I don't know about you, I don't like leaving a movie theater or putting down a book and want to go slit my wrist because I'm so depressed.
Right.
And so everything I write has to have the 3 H's.
Yeah, and that definitely does. Do you think that people see a little bit of their own family in Norman and Chelsea and Ethel?
Yeah, they definitely do, and that's part of what's so beautiful about it, is that when people come up to get Outlaws signed, a lot of times they'll have On Golden Pond stuff, a script, a poster, a program from seeing it on Broadway or some other theater, and then everybody wants to tell me how important On Golden Pond was to him or her. And I can't tell you how moving that is for me, because I feel as though I've reached them, and it's very connective for me to know that something I wrote continues to affect people, and I'm so grateful that that's the case.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have to ask you
I've had people say to me, how did you know my grandparents? Were you sleeping under my mother and father's bed? Did you know I had that relationship with my father? And then thanking me for just sort of opening the door maybe to more communication with the members of their families.
Mm-hmm. I have to talk with you a little bit about Carly Simon because this is such an amazing New Hampshire music story. You and Joe DeLalt created the father-daughter dance almost 15 years ago for your production of On Golden Pond. How did
Correct.
Carly Simon become part of that collaboration?
Yeah, that's an amazing coincidence because I happen to be friends with a wonderful writer who lives up here who used to teach at Harvard, and she would come to my writers' workshops. And she happened to be best friends with Carly Simon since the seventh grade.
Oh,
They went to school together in New York City.
mm-hmm.
And I said to Jessica Davis, ridiculous long shot, I know. But do you think there's any way Carly Simon would consider just listening to this song and seeing if it resonates for her? And she said, probably not. And I said, okay, that's the end of the story.
Mm-hmm.
But then she called me back and she said, you know what, Carly wants to hear it. So I sent it to her. And bless her heart, she came by limo from Martha's Vineyard up to the boondocks of New Hampshire. And there's a studio up here run by Randy Roos. I don't know if you know that name, but he was a big recording artist himself in the early 70s with a band called Orchestra Luna. And he's a Grammy winner, and he has a studio in the middle of Ashland, New Hampshire. And,
wow.
so
No, the name sounds very familiar to me, but I can't put the face with the name on.
Check him out.
I will.
I've done lots of stuff. I recorded the audiobook for my previous novel, The Book of Maps, in his studio, and I've done lots of songs with a whole bunch of different artists. But Carly, there she was, and if you listen closely to the father-daughter dance, you'll hear her tear up, and her voice catches. And after we did that take, she said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, we'll do it again." I said, "We are not doing it again." Yeah. That is gold, and it's true because she was moved by the song, and that's always a symbol of success. And I think people who listen to it have the same reaction.
What was it like for you being in the room when Carly sang the song, when that came together?
Okay. You want to time travel? In 1971, I was on a tour, and my first professional job as an actor was a play called The Pleasure of His Company. And our run was ending, and I was driving back to New York where I was going to begin my career and listen to Casey Kasem Top 40 Countdown. Mm-hmm. And it just so happened that Rod Stewart was on his way up with Maggie May, and Carly was on her way down with That's the Way I've Always Heard It Should Be. Mm-hmm. And I heard those two songs in rapid succession, and I wanted to pull off the road. And, so I didn't know that I would ever cross paths with Carly Simon, but here I am many years later in a room with her. And you got to understand, I've worked with 30 fellow Oscar nominees or winners, and so I've had some experience in dealing with celebrities and legends, so I'm not easily intimidated, but still in all, she's Carly Simon. Yeah. So I was, so it's a combination. I'm thinking, yeah, Carly, this is what I would love you to do. There's one word you kind of got wrong. Do you mind going back in? And she said, okay, I'm so sorry, I'll do it. And there's another part of me thinking, wow, that's Carly Simon. Mm-hmm. She's singing my song. So it's pretty cool. And we've become friends, and I just adore her. And I, as you probably know, and she announced a couple weeks ago, she's been dealing with some health issues.
Yes.
And there she is, soldiering on. Bless her heart.
Yeah. You created this song almost 15 years ago. And now, all these years later, it's on Carly Simon's brand new album. When you realized that was actually happening, what went through your mind?
That there must be a mistake here or something.
No, I don't think so.
But it's interesting. I'm not on social media, but I have friends who are on Facebook who tell me that on her page, she asks people, her fans, how are you responding to the album and what's your favorite song? And lots of people are saying the father-daughter dance. Mm-hmm. So there's a part of me that thinks, yeah, okay, that's great. We collaborated. It's the way life should be. Mm-hmm. And there's a part of me, of course, who's the fanboy forever. Mm-hmm. And, so it's pretty cool. And I don't know. I've been in this business for 55 years, and I've seen lots of stuff win and stuff not win so much. And this is a total home run for me, just to be part of her album. It's so extraordinary, and I just celebrate it.
Did it bring you back to that time at Squam Lake? Hearing her sing it
Absolutely.
again, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was funny because she's been so busy, and you probably know that a few years ago she lost both her sisters one day and the next day, and she's been through a lot.
She has been,
And
yes.
so I think she kind of forgot about the father-daughter dance,
Mhm.
and so I had occasion to speak to her a few months ago, and I said, Carly, I would love to revisit it because I use it in my Broadway production of On Golden Pond. And she said, I haven't heard that for the longest time. Can you send it to me? I said, it's on the way. And she said, I'll probably hate it because I'm very critical of everything I've ever done. So I wrote to her an email with the song, and I said, please be kind to the singer because I think she's done an extraordinary job with this.
Mhm.
4 minutes later, Carly wrote back and said, there's no need for kindness. I love this song.
Oh,
And
good.
it made me cry.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we're right back where we started, but now we get to share it with everybody. And
Mhm.
I'm really proud of that, but I'm also pleased for people. I think it's going to be a wedding classic because it's been a while since a new wedding song has been written.
Mhm.
And, in theory, every wedding has a father-daughter dance.
Yes.
So I think people are going to really respond to it. Hilariously, my daughter got married 3 years ago, and the DJ was supposed to play the father-daughter dance, and somehow it got screwed up. So instead, I danced with my daughter to How Sweet It Is, covered by one James Taylor, backup singer Carly Simon.
Oh, my. People know you as a writer, but songwriting is a big part of your creative life. What comes first for you, the words, the melody, or the emotion?
That's a great question, but there's only one answer: the lyrics. I am not a musician. I couldn't carry a tune in the back of my truck. And when Carly and I recorded the song, I was driving her back where she was staying, and she said, "God, this song is so amazing. And do you sing?" And I said, "No, I don't sing." And she said, "Well, everybody can sing." And I said, "That is not true." And she said, "Sing something." And so I started singing "Happy Birthday," and I got about 4 words into it. She said, "Oh my God, you can't sing."
Oh,
So,
jeez.
and she's right. But you know what? I've written 300 songs.
Yeah,
And
you don't
I've gotten
have to be able to sing to write songs. That's right, lyrics. Sorry.
no, and I've
Right.
gotten to work with extraordinary. Do you remember Mighty Sam McLean? Do you know that guy?
I don't. I have to say I
He was
don't.
a fabulous blues singer who lived in New Hampshire, but he had lots of great songs, and he covered a song of mine called "Find the Sun," and then I did a song with um, Joan Osborne and just lots of great people, and they don't need for me to sing, but I get to work with Joe DeLoe and lots of other composers. And Carly, of course, put her stamp on it. We call it, she Simonized the song. I'm just the luckiest guy in the world because I get to work with these people.
I have to ask you this question. Do you approach writing lyrics differently than writing dialogue?
Well, the difference is that at the end of each line there's a rhyme,
Mm-hmm.
but same deal. See above, heart, humor, and hope. I
Mm-hmm.
just apply that to everything, and sometimes I have an idea and I'm not sure what form it's going to take. Is it going to be a song, a play, a screenplay, or a novel? And so if it starts singing to me in my head, and by the way, I know what the melody is. I just can't get it out of my head. But probably
Wow.
99% of the time, when I give a lyric to a composer or singer,
Mm-hmm.
then I'm Bernie Taupin giving it to Elton John. And
Okay.
that the music is in the words
Mm-hmm.
because I write a very tight meter, and the rhyme scheme is very specific. I'm old school. I'm brill building, Tin Pan Alley. I like everything to fit exactly the way it should be fit.
Mm-hmm.
So I am all A, B, A, verse, chorus, verse, bridge.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
when composers pick up the page, they can see the music.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said, it's almost never not the way I heard it in my head.
Okay. So getting back to the people you've worked with, and some of them, Henry Fonda, Jane Fonda, Katharine Hepburn, and Carly Simon, and so many others, is there one person you've worked with who taught you something that you still carry with you today?
I learn from everybody. I learn positively, but also learn negatively. I
Mm-hmm.
learn maybe I don't want to go that way. Maybe I don't want to be bringing my bad energy to the set or whatever it is. But I, when I wrote the screenplay for On Golden Pond after having adapted it from a play, I would write more dialogue than turned out to be necessary.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a scene at the beginning of On Golden Pond where Henry Fonda is alone in the cabin and he's looking around the room and kind of reacquainting himself with it. And we
Mm-hmm.
see him look at photos of himself as a young man, and then the camera cuts to his look in the mirror, and you see his eyes. And I realized then it was a great lesson for a screenwriter that you can get 5 pages of dialogue into one look from a great actor like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
And
Yep.
Henry, bless his heart, was so kind to me. And they all were. And I think the reason I got to do the job in the first place instead of being replaced by some famous screenwriter was that Henry and Jane and Hepburn all continued doing theater. So they had more respect for the written word than is always the way in
Mm-hmm.
Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
And Henry would come up to me every day in the lunch line because he would eat with the crew. There was no standing on ceremony for Henry Fonda.
Mm-hmm.
And he would say, Ernest, I wake up every morning and thank God I lived long enough to play this role.
Oh,
So
wow.
I remember that gift that he gave me, and we became
Wow.
pals, and I would hang out with him. He was ailing, and he was kind of bedridden the last year of his life. But I would go and sit in his house, and we would chat, and he came to see another play I did with Hepburn called The West Side Waltz, and, he was on a walker by that time, but he was there and always very supportive. So, yeah, I learned a lot about life, I think, from him, more than I learned about film. And that was true of everybody. I mean, Katharine Hepburn I spent years with because we did Our Golden Pond, and then we did the West Side Waltz, and on the road for 2 years. And she was a tough cookie, and but same deal. She chose to live a better life.
Mm-hmm.
She wasn't busy in New York. She was at her home in Old Saybrook, Connecticut, doing what I do here on my farm, pulling out weeds and mowing the grass and hauling wood. And I would look at her and think, wow, so you can really have a life even while you're in the show business life.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and that was very important for me.
It keeps you grounded.
It does.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned all these people I've worked with. Some are less famous, but Joe DeLoe, I don't know if you know that name, but he has worked with everybody. He's worked with Bon Jovi and all kinds of famous people. But he teaches and runs the theater at St. Anselm's in Manchester. And we've probably written 35 songs together. Some soundtrack for movies of mine or for plays. And we're working on a musical together. And, I'm just so lucky to have Joe in my life, which is true of lots of fellow collaborators.
You've spent your career writing about families, relationships, aging, love, regret, and second chances. What do you think you're really trying to understand through all of these stories?
Life, I guess. I think all of us learned a lot during the pandemic when we were sort of isolated from others. In some cases, that was great news. In some cases, we missed them. But, it gave me a chance to sit back and really look and evaluate what's most important. So I think that if there's an overarching theme in everything that I've written, which is, I think, last count, 36 plays, 10 movies that have been produced, a bunch I've been fired from, 2 novels published, 300 songs. It's that there's a unifying human condition. And I think it's my job and my joy to just try to write that down and analyze, observe, and learn from, as you just asked, and try to just understand. And because life is complicated, and every day there's a new surprise, there's a setback or triumph, and our challenge is to meld them together and just try to stay ahead of it. And so that's what I do. I feel as if I'm a reporter, reporting on what I observe from family members, from people around me, colleagues, collaborators.
After all these years of storytelling, what still surprises you about people?
That's the key word, surprise.
Yeah.
Because you think you understand, you think you got a person down, and then that person will do something you didn't see coming,
Mm-hmm.
and probably a surprise to that person as well. But we're human beings, and we're not. Even though the robots may take over one day, we're not there. So we get to have all of these emotions and these complications and these unseen, unforecast surprises, and yet we persevere.
Mm-hmm.
I think that moves me as much as anything, and that's what I try to put down on paper. That's true in Outlaws of people who are broken, yearning to fix themselves. Not always successfully. It's not always going to be a win, but just trying. I think that's the key thing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Ernest, after everything you've written, from On Golden Pond to Outlaws, from plays and movies to songs, is there still a story inside you that you haven't told yet?
Yeah, but it's not a specific story. It's every day is a new story. And
Okay.
the minute I sent Outlaws off to the publisher, which was early in April, I sat down and started writing the next play.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
a few weeks later, I started writing the next book because I don't know how not to do that. And
Mm-hmm.
there's so many stories to be told. And I feel like a kid at summer camp, and every day I get to choose what activity I'm going to do. Am I going to write a play? Am I going to work on the new screenplay or the novel? I probably write maybe 10, 15 songs a year.
Mm-hmm.
Some will never see the lights of a recording studio, and some I think are pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I think in some ways I write closer to the bone as time goes by. My book, the Book of Maps, probably is closer to my own family than anything I've ever written.
Mm-hmm.
That may be why some of them are not speaking to me anymore. I'm not sure. But I have this. I have a picture of a T-shirt that was sent by the great novelist Tom Robbins to another writer friend of mine, and it says, "Be nice to me, or you'll end up in my novel." So, yeah, I got lots of stories to tell, and I'm very conscious that we only have so much time to tell them all. But I'm again just excited and grateful that I get to do it.
You've said you believe there's almost a compact between the artist and the person receiving the work. When someone tells you what On Golden Pond or another one of your stories meant to them, does that become part of the story for you?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how you just said that was what I believe, that
Mm-hmm.
I create something and then I'm sort of finished. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
sure I'm ever really finished, but then it becomes someone else's story. And I think that when people come to my events, and I mentioned the one coming up next week in Concord at the Bank of New Hampshire stage on, I think it's the 26th. Then we get to engage, and that's really essential for me because, as you probably have experienced yourself, the writing process is kind of a solitary one.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I get to go out and share what I've written, and we have some laughs, and we have some tears, and we really get to talk about the stuff of life.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, that's just my bread and butter. It's my lifeblood, and so I just love being able to share what I have created. And sometimes people surprise me. People will say, "Yeah, in chapter 17 in Outlaws, when this happens, this is where the story is going." I'm thinking, "Oh, I didn't know that." Okay, but that's how
Yeah.
that person reads it.
Yes.
And I don't explain everything in my books or my movies or plays.
Mm-hmm.
I want the audience or the reader to do that.
Uh-huh.
That's that person's job. I've done mine.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
so I don't like it when writers talk down to me and over-explain stuff because I'm thinking, well, why am I here then?
Mm-hmm.
I want to supply my own emotion, my own response to whatever I'm watching or reading, and I love giving that opportunity to read. Not everybody likes it. Some people just want to have it spoon-fed. that's not me, and those aren't my readers or
Uh-huh.
my audience.
Mm-hmm.
When
Right.
you
And
think
they're
about On Golden Pond, not everything is explained in On Golden Pond. We don't
right.
know what's going to happen. We don't know if Chelsea and Norman are going to be friends forever now,
Mm-hmm.
or whether it was just a moment. But
Mm-hmm.
that's what life is, and there's no predicting that. But a woman can come up to me and say, "What you told me on Golden Pond made me reevaluate my relationship with my father." I'll tell you a quick story, and then I know we got to wrap this up. But years ago, when I lived in New York, I was in an apartment building, and nobody ever knows one's neighbors, and that's kind of like the way I like it. But I was coming in one night, and I had my muffin and my soup. I wanted to go inside and eat, and the door adjoining mine opened, and this woman came out, and she said, "Oh, I know who you are." I said, "Me too." And she said, "I want to tell you a story." And I'm thinking, okay, but my soup's going to get cold.
Mm-hmm.
All right, tell me what it is. And she said, I'm Jewish, and my father and I have been estranged because I fell in love with a Gentile, and that was not for him. And so he hadn't spoken to me for a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And then recently he called me, and he said, "Listen, I just saw this movie called On Golden Pond." And I was
Oh.
thinking, maybe I'll come down to the city and we could have lunch. And
Oh.
I thought, success. I got
Yes.
to that one person. So,
Right.
uh,
Oh, I love that story. I'm
yeah,
so
I know.
glad you shared that.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
very, very moving.
Yeah. I know we do have to sort of kind of wrap this up, but I hate to let you go. This was such a thrill for me, and I know that my listening audience is going to cherish this
Well, I
interview.
hope so. And where are you based, Mama Cash?
The studio is actually based in Salisbury, Massachusetts. Do you know where that is?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We
I
just,
played in some volleyball tournaments down in Salisbury State Park. Is that touch Salisbury?
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, volleyball, beach volleyball is a big part of my life, so I do know that neck of the woods. But
Oh,
your listeners, there's nothing stopping them from coming up to Concord, New Hampshire next Wednesday, right, and
a-
seeing me in action.
absolutely not. And, and we stream globally now. We have an app.
Cool.
And so we have we have listeners in Europe, we have listeners in LA, all over the place, all over the world.
How cool
So
is that?
yes, it
Well,
is
I
very
think
cool.
if people don't know what Authors on Main is, they should. Because last night we went down to see a guy whose path I've crossed several times named Richard Russo, and he has a new novel out. And so these events, which are at the Bank of New Hampshire stage, are hosted by the Capitol Center, Gibson's Bookstore, and HPR.
Hmm.
And so it's a really well-rounded audience, but it's people who really love literature who show up, and I'm always so grateful to have that moment with them. But that's, it's true of everything. I have this short film out now called The Constituent, which we shot 2 years ago, and it's been playing at festivals. It's going to be at the Monadnock Film Festival in early October,
Hmm.
and it's going to be at the Lonely Seal Festival down in Arlington, Mass. And so we've been showing it all over the place, and people just eat it up because it's so funny and so timely. And it's about a guy who lives in the backwoods of New Hampshire, the role I play, who's been writing letters to his senator for 35 years.
Hmm.
And I say they're more profane than profound. But after 1,209 letters, the senator's had enough. He's played by Gordon Clapp, my buddy from NYPD.
Hmm.
And he shows up at the guy's door and says, "Okay, I think we need to have a little chat."
Hmm.
And that's an invitation to people to just do it, to get out there and be active. Even it's just voting, it's canvassing, it's encouraging and having those conversations. So, and I wrote that play as a one act before I wrote On Golden Pond. And here we are all these years later. I decided, okay, let's just make it. So we shot it as a super low budget film, and people are loving it. And eventually it'll be streaming somewhere. But people should check that out too. The Constituent, it's on my website, and people can see the trailer, which is hilarious, but also really, really, I think, a direct mailing challenge for people to just step up. So if people don't know, ErnestThompson.us is where I live. And anybody can come and check out all the stuff that I do and be in touch with me.
Okay, great. All right.
Mama Cash, it's been a pleasure hanging with you. Thank you so much for the conversation. I'll look forward to continuing it down the road.